Hey, this is Power Card, aka Project Pat, and you're listening to the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast, the best Ravens podcast on the planet.
It's pretty incredible. In fact, it's la-marvelous.
Thank you, guys.
All right, it is Thursday, November 20th. My name is Jake Luke, and the Baltimore Ravens are making the proverbial turn here into the back nine of the 2020 season. They're sitting at 6-2, and we got a little quarterly tradition here that we are going to be continuing that started back at the end of the first quarter of the season. It's host, chief, and deputy, a title that still to this day completely befuddles me, but I can't say that I hate it. Like I said, my name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined by the chief and the deputy, or one of the hosts, whatever the fuck. I don't know, but it's Vasilis Lericos and Kyle Barber. How you fellas doing?
Good. Happy Veterans Day.
Absolutely. Happy Veterans Day, and happy to be joined by you two monkeys in the studio. We're going to have a barrel of fun, and I wanted to start that barrel off with some Macallan 12 in some Sherry Oak cask.
Oh, this guy drinks.
Oh, yes.
Good stuff right there.
You guys usually pop the cans on the show. You have the noise effect. You know, get the sound effects of the fake cans popping. I just wanted to make this one on your soundboard. There we go.
That's strong. Yeah. Although that wasn't actually on camera, so I don't know if I totally believe that.
That's fine. That's fine. The drinking throughout the evening will definitely be on camera. So cheers to you boys.
Antonio Banderas got you. Just leans back.
No kidding. Let's party it up, right? Yeah. But no, I'm happy to be here with you guys, and absolutely happy Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to my dad too. He's a former Army. He was 82nd Airborne. He was a paratrooper, like real deal, jumping out of fully well-equipped airplanes to land on the ground, but he was jumping out of them anyways.
So great military history with your family. Shout out to him. And most importantly, nobody respects the troops more than me. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. And I can also throw this out there. A thank you for your service. So each and every troop that listens to the show, doesn't listen to the show, we love you all. Me in particular loves you. So.
All right, this is going to go great. Looking forward to the second episode, boys. Looking forward to it. All right, well, if you want to start it off, we will, like last episode, go through our half-season report instead of the quarter season. This time, the second 4 games that the Baltimore Ravens enjoyed, or most of them anyways. The 4 games listed are the Bengals matchup, Eagles matchup. There was a bye week. We can talk about that if we have time, if you want to. The Steelers matchup, and last week's Colts-Ravens face-off. Vass, I kind of wanted to toss this over to you for the game 1 on it. The Bengals matchup, Ravens won it 27-3. What were your notes from that game?
So just real quick, Kyle and I do this every quarter. I don't know if anybody missed the late September or the October show, but we just want to get a little bit more perspective add to the conversation. And if anyone does remember or did tune in to our last show, it was right before the Bengals game. We were a little bit concerned, I think, all 3 of us. Bengals had a lot of weapons. Turned out to not be a problem. Ravens totally dominated. The defense had 7 sacks, 27-3. They kicked a field goal at the end to avoid the shutout. Hollywood and Andrews had their very solid game, combined for 12 catches, 133 yards, and 2 scores, and they made light work of Cincinnati.
Yeah, this was the reminder that the Baltimore Ravens defense is nasty. Burrow ended with fewer than 200 passing yards, didn't throw for a touchdown, threw for an interception, and as you mentioned, was sacked 7 times. I believe Campbell had 3 sacks in that game. This is where the defense of the Baltimore Ravens showed off, and when the Ravens got an early lead, this is they get their early lead, they take care of business, and they never let off the gas in this regard, at least in this matchup. And that kind of transitions me into the next game where the foot was let off the gas. The Eagles came storming back in the next week's matchup. It was the Ravens, Eagles, and the Ravens narrowly won this one 30-28. And I felt like this was the game of where the Ravens learned the lesson of you need to bury a team. It's 60 minutes. Doesn't matter how poor that team is. They are always capable of a comeback. Every team is an NFL team, no matter how poor their record is. And it was a little bit of the discipline. There were some poor penalties. It was a lack of clicking together as an offense and as defense, as a team as a whole. And it allowed a weak team to show up and nearly take hold of a W here and really put the Ravens into worrisome win-loss territory.
That's always been the formula for the Ravens, Kyle, as they showed with the Bengals. They jump out to another lead, run the ball down their throat, create some turnovers on defense, and put them away early. And against the Eagles, it displayed why the 2020 team might be a little bit different than the 2019 team, where they couldn't put them away because they didn't quite have that dominant rushing offense. Philly had a very strong defensive line. They couldn't quite close the door until Matthew Judon made a nice stop on the 2-point attempt that would have tied the game. I still thought the Ravens played this game. They played pretty well. It was closer than they appeared. It was 24-6 after 3 quarters. This was Campbell's actually 3-sack game, Kyle.
Thank you.
Not to correct you, but and then Lamar had a nice 37-yard touchdown run. The Eagles, I actually think they might make a little bit of run here in the second half, getting healthy. They're not a bottom-dwelling team. I think they probably are going to end up winning that division. It was a road game, survive in advance. I'll take a road win against a quality team anytime.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you for correcting me. Actually, I don't want to be advertising the wrong information here. I did want to give a shout out in this game to Justin Tucker. Obviously, I'm gonna make mention of the greatest kicker of all time. Hit a 55-yarder in this matchup, and that was huge because this the game ended 30-28. That kick, that field goal could very well have been the difference. It was the difference in my mind. And those kickers, you can never undervalue him. He was 3 for 3 in this game on field goals. He was 2 for 2 from 40 to 49 yards. He hit a 55-yarder, like I mentioned, 1 plus 50, hit all 3 extra points. And those are big points that you need from a kicker at any time. And when you call upon their name and they consistently show out, you got to show some appreciation for them.
Absolutely. Tucker is the best in the game, the best probably of all time. He's an ace in a hole every single week. And it gives the Ravens a great advantage to go into every single game with a pronounced advantage in the 5th phase.
Right. Now, moving on, there was the bye week. I'm not sure if you have any notes regarding that. I didn't cover it too much in my notes. Do you got something?
No, not really. I mean, it was a good time for the Ravens going into their rivalry game. The coaches had an opportunity to, study the tendencies, get a little bit healthier, work some things out. Lamar was I think he had a lower leg injury at one point that he seems to be recovering from. So pretty nondescript bye week overall.
Right. And then moving on was the Steelers matchup. I came into this with my notes of it was something that Spencer kind of mentioned in the Slack chat. Spencer Schultz at Ravens for Dummies. If you guys want to throw him a follow, by the way, the other half of Jake's podcast of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. And he said, if I would have said that this game would feature Ronnie Stanley out, Matt Judon out, and would you have even called this close to a win? 2 of your best players, one of the best players on defense, arguably the best player on offense, of course, notwithstanding the quarterback. But would you have really thought that the Ravens would have been able to handle business against the Steelers? And I just said no. I don't believe I would have even said it'd been a 4-point game. I'd have said it'd probably be 8 to 12 points because those guys are so valuable towards this team. And that was also prior to Yannick Ngakoue getting traded and all that. But nonetheless, the Ravens fought hard in this matchup. J.K. Dobbins popped off for 113 yards. You got Gus Edwards going for another 87. Jackson added another 65. We got to see some running completely from this offense. Honestly, we argued that there wasn't enough running in this offense, and it's pretty wild that Ronnie Stanley going down kind of sparked a better run game, or it allowed Greg Roman to transition from, hey, we're not going to be able to get these passes off because they're just coming downhill so fast at Lamar in this passing game that we're going to have to get this ball pushed forward and hopefully, subvert that with some counters, with some misdirection, and just kind of running the ball. And as a whole, Gus Edwards just being a bulldozer and J.K. Dobbins popping off. I want to give a shout out to Willie Snead in this matchup. He had 106 yards. I believe it was on 5 receptions. He had 7 targets, and one of those targets could have been a game-winning touchdown had it been for, like Harbaugh said, a questionable non-call. The refs didn't throw the flag. I don't know if roles reversed. If I would have wanted Chuck Clark to get called if he hit Juju Smith-Schuster that way, but I feel like maybe that flag would have been called in that instance. What were your thoughts on this matchup, Vass?
Pittsburgh always gets all the calls. That's been since I was a Ravens fan. They're a public team. They have a national following. Look at every single game. I know they're undefeated, but they got a lot of calls. The Ravens have lost in the playoffs for phantom holding calls on punt return touchdowns. But I'm not going to blame the referees. Sometimes the Ravens get some breaks from the referees. Sometimes they don't. I went into the Steelers game very confident. I think the Ravens match up great against the Steelers. The yardage totals prove that. 457 yards for the Ravens, 221 yards for the Steelers. Unfortunately, Lamar Jackson, 2 bad interceptions. There's no doubt about it. He played actually a pretty solid game if you take away those 2, but you can't have 2 terrible interceptions. One was scored a touchdown. The other one led to a touchdown. Bad timing, start of the game, start of the second half. In my mind, the better team lost. I would be excited about a rematch. Well, obviously, they're going to have a rematch in a couple weeks, but a rematch in January because I think the Ravens match up very well against Pittsburgh. I'm not scared of Pittsburgh whatsoever. Gus and Dobbins, as you said, Dobbins went off. Gus and he combined for 200 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. And everyone should remember, Week 17 of the 2019 season, without Lamar, Ravens were already assured of the bye. They rested Marshall Yanda, Ronnie Stanley, Lamar Jackson, and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill ran the ball down Pittsburgh's scary, not really scary, defense's throat. They were missing Stephon Tuitt, but they did have Bush in that game. It's a tough loss. Obviously, we wish the Ravens won that game, but obviously losing Ronnie Stanley is a big deal. We'll get to that, but it's not discouraging as far as the season-long outlook, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that coverage there. I wanted to note and agree with you that I'm not nearly as scared of the Pittsburgh Steelers as I am of some other teams in the AFC and in the NFL. They don't have as much of a threatening presence. The Ravens aren't scared by them. And we're going to touch on penalty discussion a little bit, but I did want to pull up the Pittsburgh numbers on them, and I'll compare them when we get a little further down. But essentially, Pittsburgh has been benefited second most in the NFL in net yards. They've been benefited with 8 fewer counts of flags being called. They're the third highest in that field of the game, and it's pretty suspect that they've just continued to get those calls. And like you said, they do get the calls. This team does. It's not just this biased, we don't like Pittsburgh, we don't like the Steelers. Like, no, the math is showing here they've been called for 8 fewer penalties. They've been called for penalties that have allowed them 126 net yards over their opponents in their matchups thus far.
That's a great find. That's a great find. It's not anecdotal. That's great, Kyle. So the final game that we're going to look at here was obviously the game against Indy. I like to call him Indy. I think the mascot should have stayed in Baltimore, but that's a story for another day. In my opinion, just like Cleveland, right? Cleveland didn't have a team for 2 years. They kept their mascot. They kept their colors. But
for some reason, the Browns story is the most tragic in the entire world. But
right,
God, it drives me absolutely
the Ravens
mad.
sold out every single game for 20 some years when they finally got a team. And I'm a little bit older than you guys, and I grew up as a Joe Montana and later Dan Marino fan because there was no local team. And but of course Cleveland, they're the Cinderellas or whatever. But anyway, back to Indy. We call them Indy. I thought that was the best win of the 2020 season thus far. The Ravens showed incredible resilience. They were shorthanded. They had a COVID scare where half the defense seemingly wasn't able to practice. Marlon Humphrey, in my opinion, their best overall player, couldn't play. And they lost Calais Campbell, their best defensive lineman, after 3 snaps. And they still won. And the offense came out anemic. They could barely move the ball. Marcus Peters started making plays. Defense started making plays. Lamar engineered the first second-half comeback of his career. And the defense was outstanding. They held Rivers and Indy to 2 of 12 on third down. They are the best defense in the NFL right now.
Oh, no doubt about it. The Ravens defense is firing on all cylinders, and they're doing so with manufactured parts that they're picking up from a random junkyard the week before. They're getting these random signings, they're putting in new parts, they're putting in new people, and still they're firing well. What I had wrote down for this was Baltimore's death has been greatly exaggerated. The fan base, these fans that think that since they didn't beat this star-studded KC Chiefs team, since they didn't beat the undefeated Steelers team, that the Ravens are done for. They can't do anything. Baltimore's death has been greatly exaggerated. The defense was absent of some star players, still balled out. The cornerback depth was on life support, and still old Felipe Rios could not get the job done. And overall, the Ravens showed them who was the boss. They showed them that this Baltimore team is better than the Indy team, and there was no doubt about it when the final whistle blew.
Hey, guys, I'm really sorry. Can we pause this for 1 minute?
Mm-hmm.
A tree just fell on my neighbor's house.
Oh, my God.
And they're asking for me to help them.
I know all about that. Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
Give me like 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me see what's going on.
Oh, man. That's wild.
So on brand.
Dude, you guys saw the photos of my house
That's
of
what
the
I'm saying.
windstorm that was snapping and destroying my roof and everything. We had the insurers go there. Is YouTube up yet, by the way?
Yeah, so it live streams to there. So it's going to YouTube right now. We are live to YouTube.
YouTube wasn't working for like the last hour and a half. YouTube's been down.
It worked. So I recorded That's a Bingo earlier, and it worked fine. Looks like it's working now. I've got it pulled up on my phone. That's where I'm getting.
It's showing on yours. It's not showing on mine.
Yeah, that's where I've actually been getting the links from.
Weird.
To be tweeting them out for social. But I guess I can pop into his seat here. I guess where were we?
Where were we? We're just talking about the Colts game. Talking about the Colts matchup.
The Indy game. The Indy matchup.
Yeah, the Indy matchup. My apologies here, folks. Why is that not working? That's weird. Yeah, it's showing up on. Maybe it's just on my browser. Sorry, guys. I'm just.
Yeah, it might be a who could say situation.
Whatever. It's not pulling up. Whatever. Doesn't matter. But yeah, I wanted to pull up the stats on that. Lamar ended up with. He only threw 23 passes in that matchup, but he went 82% in that game. 19 for 23, only 170 yards, took 2 sacks, but a quarterback rating of 97.5. I'll take that any day of the week. He also ran for 58 yards, had that touchdown on the bootleg play. That was really clever play calling by Giro. Swing him out. I always remember that play as the Peyton Manning sneak, where Manning snuck out on that bootleg. I can't remember. I think it was against the Cowboys in that crazy 6 touchdown game by Romo and by Manning each when they were popping off. That was always pretty fun.
Sorry, guys.
Is the house okay?
Everything good?
I don't know. She texted my wife, and my wife's texting me she wants me to get the chainsaw out and cut a tree off her fence at 9:00 at night when it's soaking wet. Get out of here. I'll help her out, but not right now.
It's been weather-wise not a great day.
Did you see what I sent this morning?
No.
The weather report.
Yeah.
Hold on. Are you gonna listen to this?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
I never seen the guy said hold on. I wasn't even trying to like come at it was like perhaps a rumble of thunder or something. The way they worded it was hysterical.
A steady rain this morning, showers with perhaps a rumble of thunder developing for the afternoon. High 68 degrees Fahrenheit, winds south at 5 to 10 miles per hour, chance of rain 100%. Locally heavy rainfall possible.
Showers with perhaps a rumble was activity Voss was taking place in back in college a lot.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of the offense, like steady rain, like bunch of dives up the middle, perhaps a rumble of thunder, maybe like a Duvernay, I don't know, end around. I don't know.
Little ACDC brand activation there. Thunderstruck.
Yeah.
A little bit. Oh man. But yeah, we were just covering more of the Indy game. I was talking about Lamar. He didn't throw a whole lot in that matchup. 23 passes, 19 of them were completions though. That's 82%, 170 yards. While that's not a whole lot, he didn't have to do a whole lot, and it still walked away with a 97.5 quarterback rating. And he added on 58 yards. One of them was the touchdown. I talked about how it was the bootleg touchdown, that little fun one that I always think of it as the Manning end around, like little bootleg from the matchup against the Cowboys. I think it was like 2013 when he was just throwing all the touchdowns physically possible, and that crazy Cowboys Broncos matchup where he ended up scoring a bootleg sneak all the way out to the very far end for Manning, and like he's like 40 years old, just
pretty sick
running.
When like nobody ever believes that you'll leave the pocket ever.
It was brilliant. So Lamar just speeding off to that spot was pretty clever. So that's about where we were when you hop back on. If you want to pretend like nothing ever happened, we can go straight to the thoughts on the trade deadline, Vass. I know you enjoyed the trade for Yannick. What do you have any other thoughts? Or what
All
do you
right,
have?
so let's break down Ngakoue, or let me just give a couple thoughts I have. I did not think edge rusher was a great need. The Ravens already had Judon, McPhee, Bowser, Ferguson, Ward, but it doesn't hurt. I think Yannick is a pass rush specialist. You can't be upset about improving the pass rush, especially not for a third-round pick. I personally would pump the brakes on this notion that now all of a sudden DeCosta is going to pay Yannick and Judon is going to be let to hit the market. I think that remains to be seen. And I think Judon, in my personal opinion, is a better all-around player. Yannick has not recorded a sack yet for the Ravens. That said, I did think he did make an impact against Indy, against Rivers. He was in his face, creating pressure, contributing to that woeful third down conversion rate. He was very good on third down. So I think it's an audition. And I liked that DeCosta was active, and I think it was a good trade.
Yeah, can't argue with any of that. You want a pass rusher. The complaints have been this team needs to be able to get after the quarterback with only four-man rushes, and that can come in the form of any combination of Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, Calais Campbell, Tyus Bowser, Pernell McPhee, Derek Wolfe, Brandon Williams. We've even seen Big Baby getting in the mix a little bit there on some interior pressure because soloing him is a pretty tall task for any offensive lineman, especially center, because he's in there at defensive tackle and nose tackle now. He's more in on the interior than they were playing him in previous seasons. So it's been pretty good to watch. I know that you were when you mean that the Ravens' need wasn't exactly edge rusher. I know that you're going to probably be meaning that as they needed another weapon on the offense and at wide receiver. I completely agree with that. The discussion, I think, in the Slack chat and all across Twitter was always, which wide receiver, and the most lauded receiver was Michael Gallup. And there was a reason for that, and it was the Cowboys have Amari Cooper locked up. They drafted CeeDee Lamb. He's good for 4 years before he needs to be going anywhere. You want to kind of tank for a little bit better of a pick maybe for Dallas because you lost Dak Prescott for the year. This is kind of a washed season. Their offensive line has been dismantled through injuries. You might as well kind of tank it a little bit and get some value out of a pick that, is not going to help you win the Super Bowl this year. And I think he got to get paid, I believe, not this year, not the upcoming, but the one after. Right. So it's kind of a good value for them to get a maximum trade value in. Like, hey, you got one more year. The Ravens are pushing. They're making this all in push. This is the guy for your cheap contract that you can still kind of make this last 2-year hopeful leap with. That was the guy that I, of course, wanted. He's a CSU alum. I'm going to CSU, of course. I'm in my senior year here. I would have loved the pick personally for all the reasons I'd mentioned, plus the bonus pick of proud to be the CSU Ram. Vas, what do you got?
So, yes, I agree. I thought receiver, wideout in particular, was the main need, what I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. I think the Ravens need to add a receiver at some point to unlock the offense. They need to prevent teams from doubling Mark Andrews. They need to prevent teams from using that Dean Pease formula template that he did in the playoffs, where you jam the middle of the field between the hashes and you're not scared of anything on the outside, because that's what's really hurting the offense right now. Apparently Dallas didn't want to trade Gallup. I don't know why Jerry, whatever you want to say, is so stubborn. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Will Fuller from Houston was on the block, was available, almost went to Green Bay. Green Bay did not want to pay the price. Apparently it was a second-round pick, I believe. And I don't necessarily blame DaCosta for passing on that one. I have to be honest. Once Stanley got hurt, I think maybe you reconsider, and maybe this isn't the year to push all in. One other player who some had rumored was maybe available was Allen Robinson from the Bears, who in my opinion is a tier above the Fuller Gallup types. He's a bona fide top 15, top 20 wide receiver in the entire league. He's an upcoming unrestricted free agent. Understand the Bears wouldn't want to trade him while they were leading the division or, within striking distance of the playoffs. He's probably going to hit the market. They have not been able to come to terms. I think just a little sneak preview at the offseason edition. I think that's who you put the bullseye on. The Ravens should have between 15 and 20 million in cap space to go out and add another player. And I think that's what they really need to make the offense hum. You have to get better passing outside the hashes, period.
Yeah, I really like the idea of Allen Robinson as that player. I mean, in 2019, man managed to catch 98 balls for 1,100 yards, just a little over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. And he's doing that with Trubisky. You upgrade that offense from Trubisky throwing you the ball to Lamar Jackson. You got Hollywood on one side. You got Mark Andrews in the middle. AR-15 would be able to pop off in that regard. I mean, he would play far better than he would right now, which is nowhere near it. And he's getting force-fed the ball a whole lot. And I don't think while he would, I wouldn't call him diva because I don't like that term as a whole, but especially with him, he wants to play the game of football. Allen Robinson does. He commands the ball because he knows he's good. He's not like the likes of Odell Beckham Jr. or Antonio Brown's later years, where I don't see him throwing a fit because he's not getting the ball. He just wants he wants opportunities to make the plays, and he's not blowing up on the sidelines, at least that I've seen, or in the way.
Would you consider him a soldier?
Yes. He's a soldier. He's a soldier, and they never use him. Never. It's like never.
Speaking of soldiers, I wouldn't be doing my job as a producer here if I didn't steer the conversation into what do we think of as far as the soldier aspect, as far as being maybe a potential hedge against a trade. What do we think of Mr. Desmond Demond Bryant?
That's exactly where I was going next. I like the signing. I think it's worth a flyer. We'll see what he has left. Why not take a shot there and see if he can, produce better than Miles Boykin and the other guys in the room.
I am all for the practice squad signing of Des Bryant. He hasn't played a game in 2 years, though. But I think the name recognition alone catches him either in some double coverage or just enough fear from a defensive coordinator. Like, we can't get burned by old man Des Bryant. We cannot allow that to happen. We gotta bracket him on certain plays. We can never we can't let him get single high coverage. We can't let him go man to man, because if we're losing to old man Des Bryant, we're gonna have problems. So I think that alone was worth it, in my opinion, just to pick him up. And also, maybe he can teach Miles Boykin something, or he can spark something in Miles Boykin, which is definitely what we saw in that Colts game. Right off the bat, Miles Boykin came in and was playing like he knew his job was on the line, and that signing was a direct indicator that he needed to step TF up.
The other thing I like about Dez is that he plays with an edge. Mm-hmm. He's not intimidated. I grew up in Billick's Ravens, and I know some people.
You're always talking about edging too. I don't really know what you mean by that.
Just they don't get intimidated, and in fact they do the intimidating. There's only a few players on this team that really play that way anymore. You have Pat Ricard, the intro master on offense, setting tone. And on defense, you have McPhee, you have Judon, you have Peters, you have Humphrey. But I think you need a little bit more. In against Tennessee, in the playoffs, the Ravens were bullied. I think they were bullied. And it's good to have another alpha in the room. And if that sometimes turns into Matthew Judon sticking up for his teammate and getting thrown out of a game, I would still prefer that than a team that backs down when the other team is the more aggressive unit.
Yeah, 100%. You want people to fight for your team. You want people to fight for your brothers. You want to be able to go to battle, and that's what football is. It's battle, and you want to be able to show them that you're not going to back down. You're gonna be right there, and you're gonna lock heads, whatever you got to do. I completely agree with that. Going on to our next section here, we were going to do a little bit of the injury talk, a little coverage on the maybe the small C word there, some COVID-19 talk. The big injury, of course, as we mentioned, was Ronnie Stanley out for the year, ankle injury, had to have season-ending surgery on that one. Huge loss, just signed a huge $112 million max value on that contract. Great contract for him, worked with the franchise, and it's a huge blow. He's one of the best pass blocking left tackles in the NFL, bar none, one of the best. And I wrote about in this that, some fans were a little bit interested in seeing Ronnie Stanley getting the tag and maybe seeing Orlando Brown Jr. at left tackle and seeing what he could do, because, he was originally a left tackle. That's what he kind of always dreamed of. I saw some tweets about that, some comments from him talking about when he had to step up and play left tackle these last couple of weeks. That he's always dreamed of this. His dad did it. He wanted to do it. And now this is the opportunity that's presented itself. And it's awesome to be able to see Orlando Brown Jr. slot in there, but you'd much rather have left tackle Ronnie Stanley out there and Orlando bullying people on the right side, getting the lanes opened up like he has been doing for the various runners in the Ravens backfield this year. What other injury news are you wanting to cover? I was going to talk about Double A after this one.
Stanley obviously weakens the offensive line. Mm-hmm. I think that they're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Orlando Brown has played pretty well on the left side. DJ Fluker's played pretty well on the right side, but maybe Fluker could have been the solution at right guard. So it's always hurts no matter who, when you lose one of your top 3, 4, 5 players, no matter what. I think this is just another side note here. It's a prime example of why teams shouldn't pay market value for players while they're still under team control. So Ronnie Stanley took a slight discount. He took, I think, $19.5 million per year, which was a pretty decent discount off of Tunsil. The reason was because the Ravens could have tagged him, and they could have tagged him again, and it still would have been probably less than what he ended up signing for. And the reason why is because they could get injured. So the team shouldn't give away all their leverage for nothing. It doesn't make any sense. But Stanley, it hurts. I think the offensive line is going to be okay, just because Lamar Jackson, the threat of Lamar Jackson, really, really benefits offensive tackles. So we'll see how that goes. But before you move on the corners, Calais Campbell, I think, is another one. That's the best defensive lineman. What do you say about Calais, Kyle?
There's talk of him going on the IR, him going to be out a couple weeks. That's really a huge loss for the Ravens and that defense. He's been pretty versatile in Wink's scheme, which we are known to understand it as being a versatile defense. He's had him out in coverage. We saw that in week 1, in which he helped get Marlon Humphrey that first interception on the season, because he was dropping back, and he almost had the pick himself. He's got those big arms. He's been swatting down passes. He's been, making big plays. He had a hat trick of sacks in the Eagles game, as we've noted. And overall, that's a big loss. On the third play of the game, as you mentioned, against the Indy team, it's a big loss, and it's really aggravating that things kind of feel like they're falling apart, and we're trying to ignore. We're the dog in the burning house meme, where you see things are starting to melt all around you, and you're like, this is fine. No, this is fine. Everything's fine. You see the broken chair, and Ronnie Stanley's out. You see, COVID affecting Marlon Humphrey and some of the defensive players. You see Calais Campbell go down. Everything's fine. We're good. Fire department's going to be here any day now. We're going to be okay. That's kind of how it feels right now. Things are kind of crashing in on themselves, and you hope that this team has the mentality, the mettle to get through these parts of the football, because that's what this game is. A lot of it is about fortune and luck and health and subsiding those injuries. And you got to get through the bad parts, and you got to peak at the right time. And, I'd much rather have Campbell down for a few weeks of a calf strain in weeks 9 through 12 than I would week 17 and on. That's for sure. I'd rather Ronnie Stanley unfortunately suffer a season-ending injury earlier in the season than at the very end, when you've been meshing together for 17 weeks and all of a sudden things got to jumble around. I'm not happy about, obviously, any of these injuries. You never root for them for your team. You never root for other teams and players to get hurt. That's not what we do here. But overall, I think Campbell's injury is very unfortunate, but I think the Ravens and their depth on the defensive line will be capable of carrying on until he returns.
I'd agree with that. It's a really tough time of the schedule for Campbell to suffer this injury. That's probably a 3, 4, maybe 5-week injury. Mm-hmm. He's not a young man anymore, and that's why sometimes it's the risk of going for these players on the third contract. They're a little bit discounted, but they're a little bit more injury prone. In the end, I think the Ravens will be okay. They do have Brandon Williams. He should be able to occupy 2 blockers and make a dent on the opposition's run game on his own, right? That's why the Ravens are paying him the big bucks, to be that stuffer. And the more concerning thing to me is it's just leg injuries with linemen and Campbell and Stanley too. I mean, that's going to be a tough recovery. But at the end of the day, maybe I'm naive, but I never foresee a Ravens team that's going to be dominated in the trenches. That's just in their DNA. They stack bodies on the defensive line and the offensive line, and I think they'll be okay.
Completely agree there. This team, the Ravens, just aren't known for allowing the trenches to be their weakness. They will put bodies in there until they have all 11 standing in the box, and even so, they're still going to try and figure out a way to put whatever they can to defend it and force you to win a different way and force you to scheme around that kind of a weakness. Moving on, we're going to talk about the injuries at defensive back, Anthony Averett had a chip, I believe, or a fracture in his shoulder. He's been out 5 to 6 weeks. He's been put on IR. Khalil Dorsey suffered, I believe, a separated shoulder. He's going to be out for a few weeks. Tavon Young, obviously, as we know from the last breakdown, he suffered a knee injury, a tendon injury, a ligament, excuse me, and he's out for the season. He just restructured his contract. I don't know if you guys caught that. I stumbled upon it shortly before the show. Actually, I've been a little bit tuned out due to some other things.
You were reading Ravens news this morning, Kyle?
Yeah. I'm on every so often, in between classes, I pop on, trying to do my due diligence. But overall, the Ravens are defensive
Biggie Marshall
backs.
too. Biggie Marshall, don't forget him.
Yes, Big E Marshall. It's really unfortunate. My Allie's mom's boyfriend. He's a huge USC guy, and he was super hype about me, like having video of like Iman Marshall from last training camp. He's like, man, he's gonna do great things this year. He's gonna do great things, and unfortunately,
also,
he's
indirectly friends with this show because of his friendship with one Walt Hansberry.
Yep. Shout out Walt. Shout out for that heater of a clip that he's got on Twitter right now.
I'd like you to describe that in as much detail as you possibly can.
That's where we're gonna leave that one. But yeah, so the Ravens secondary. This is something we've talked about a lot, and Ozzie has been quoted time after time. We hear it endlessly because it's true. Unfortunately, but it always is repeated endlessly, is that you can never have enough corners. And this is exactly why. The Ravens only had, I believe, 3 cornerbacks on the roster for the Colts game. It was Peters, it was Khalil Dorsey and Jimmy Smith. Like Anthony Levine was going to have to come in as dimebacker. Who was the other one?
Bonds.
And Bonds, yes, Terrell Bonds. Like
Dorsey got hurt on special teams.
Yeah, and Dorsey got hurt. It was looking rough. They were going to call Vass up to the active roster. He was going to hop in there, get some checks.
Well, we call him a freak around here, so that would.
So it was
not as fast as I used to be.
Not as fast. You can still run a 4.4, right? You got this, man.
I think I'm good for the first 10 yards, and then
you're putting away from the computer to go grab a chainsaw and potentially cut a tree in half in 5 minutes. You said so. Maybe you're not being confident enough.
Yeah, come on, man, step up. But yes, the injuries are mounting in the depth at corner. The Ravens signed Tramon Williams for this. They've put in bids for some waiver claims. I saw that on Twitter earlier today, that they put in waivers for somebody that made it to the Jets practice squad. It feels a lot like that 2014 team where the Ravens are just desperate to land anybody's practice squad corners in the meantime while people get healthy, get back. And hopefully the Ravens, they got Marlon Humphrey back. Everything comes back. But what are your thoughts on this whole corner stuff?
On the bright side, their top 3 corners are amazing, I think if you look around the league, any of the 3 would be the number 1 top corner on probably half the teams, and they have 3 of them,
I think that's fair.
But they definitely needed some depth there, and they need to play the dime. The dime defense, in my opinion, is their most effective group. That's, if you chart it, they get far and away the most takeaways and turnovers out of the dime. And they just did not have enough defensive backs to make it happen. I was wondering if Nigel Warrior would finally see some action. Practice squad player, undrafted free agent. He's still on the practice squad. Geno Stone was promoted. Regardless, Tramon Williams, 37 years old. When I looked at that, I was like, my God, he's 37 years old.
Wow.
And then I remember that I'm 37 years old.
Oh, no.
It was one of those like, wow, I am old moments.
That'll break your heart there.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But the last 37-year-old that the Ravens signed was Deion Sanders. And he had some decent impact for the team. I don't think that Tramon Williams is necessarily going to do that. But
do you think?
I mean, he's not a bad player.
Do you think that he should I don't know if 37 is even available, but do you think that he should take 37 like Dion did because of his age?
Just throw who wears 37 right now? It is taken. Just throw somebody a Rolex and take the 37.
It was Buck Allen for a hot minute.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is off the top.
I'm looking it up.
Is it Dorsey? It might be Dorsey.
It's Biggie. It's Biggie.
It's Marshall. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's Iman Marshall. I mean, yeah, that's available. I mean, Marshall's not on the field.
Nice and healthy, and then maybe you can have 37 back. What do we say, Biggie?
Yep.
Yeah, that'll work.
He needs to take that then.
But I think they need it. I think it's good depth because then if God forbid Humphrey or Peters or Jimmy get dinged, and we know Jimmy does get dinged from time to time. He's been missing time with back injury, and then Achilles was acting up and whatever. You need something behind them. Hopefully, at the end, long story short, hopefully Averett will be back sooner rather than later.
He played really well. He was good. He was good in the short stint that he was out there on the field. He gets a lot of flack. I really like the kid. I think you guys know that. I've tried to interview him on the first day of training camp every year since he got drafted because I wanted to kind of build a little bit of a relationship with him as a reporter. I was trying to do that. And then the small C word showed up and ruined that this year. And so I wasn't able to go out there and interview him. But, yeah, Averett played really well. You know, he was more hyped, as we've talked about, up as a corner than Humphrey was. You know, they were a duo, and he was more hyped up as a player. But, you know, he has done really well in the times that he was called upon in 2020. He struggles from time to time, yes. You know, he's not going to be this bona fide number one. At least we are not going to see it on the Ravens. But overall, I really liked what I saw from him.
So the small C word. Can we get some clarification there?
COVID.
Okay.
the big C. The big C is
these are family friendly. By the way,
it's an around the NFL reference, which you showed me that show, by the way. So I thought you'd understand this a little bit. The big C is
this is family friendly airwaves.
Yeah. Big C is cancer. That's
shout out to Chris Wrestling.
Yes, and so I thought this would be a little play on that and call it the small C. You're prone to your own small C though, so it's not my fault, man. I'm sorry that you thought that was a personal attack on you, man.
No, I didn't. I'm just there are certain words that start with C that I don't want disgracing these airwaves.
Oh yes, these Virgin Air, this Virgin Air over here.
All right, Virgin Air. I want to move us on to the penalty discussion. I know, Kyle, you unearthed some intel on the holding and that whole situation.
Yes. Okay, so first off, I wanted to point out, I asked Harbaugh after, I believe, the Eagles game. It might have been after the Steelers game. I can't quite. It was November 2nd. When was that? An eternity ago. It was before the election. So that was, forever ago. But yeah, so I asked Harbaugh. I was like, hey, John, over the past 2 weeks, your team has been called for 21 penalties for 240-plus yards, while your opponents were a combined 6 penalties for only 50 yards. Those were over 2 games. I know the mantra is you can only control what you can control, but does this feel a little lopsided? Is this something you've maybe brought to the attention of the league? Ravens head coach John Harbaugh responded with, it doesn't feel lopsided. I mean, it is lopsided. We try to look at every penalty individually and coach our guys, and that's really all we can do. The rest of it is out of our hands. I know you said it's cliche, but it's also a reality. We're not going to worry about that. If things get called and that we don't think should have been called, it really doesn't matter. That's just something we have to overcome. And he's right. It's also cliche. It's also reality, you know, all the above. But overall, I mean, I had some stats, that I published on Twitter earlier today talking about this stuff. And let me scroll up to it. The last time a Ravens opponent was called for offensive holding was week 6. They were by week 7, but they played 2 other games. So in the last 2 games, the Ravens have not had a single offensive holding call against them. They've had a combination of players on the field, including Derek Wolfe, Calais Campbell, Matt Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, and I just find it hard to believe that opponents playing these guys for, as many series as they have are playing perfectly against this, team. They've been called for a grand total of 4 offensive holding calls. The Ravens' opponents have only been called for 4 offensive holding calls in 8 games played. That's all pretty suspect. Overall, I have it as the Ravens have been called for 51 penalties in 8 games. The Ravens' opponents, 35. That's a 16 flag difference. The Ravens have been called for 484 yards of penalties. Their opponents, 280, excuse me. That's a net of 204 yards difference going against the Ravens in penalty yards. Yes, the Ravens have been called for illegal formation, illegal motion, illegal positioning, pre-snap penalties. We've seen that. Those are all fair. They're legal calls. I have no issues with them. I do have issue with this gap. This is too much of a difference to not be noticed. This is too weird. This is too big. And I think there's something wrong with it. And we've seen it on tape. We've seen it in games getting called. It's a damn problem. And I'm not sure why the hell it's so bad. I'm not sure if this is the team being so undisciplined, but what the hell is where I'm at this point. What the hell?
That's definitely eyebrow raising. You would think maybe run pass split has something to do with it, but I'm not sure that makes sense either. The thing that's the penalties that irk me personally are the pre-snap penalties and the special teams penalties. I really hope the Ravens can clean that up. They can only control what they can control, and they can certainly control those.
Mm-hmm. Spencer followed in tweeting this stuff out. He kind of copied me into it and said the Ravens' opponents haven't been flagged for a defensive pass interference once this season. Cam Newton is the only other qualified passer to not have a defensive pass interference call. In 2019, Ravens' opponents were only flagged for DPI twice. Only 2 DPIs against the Ravens in all of 2019. That means in 761 dropbacks since 2019, 614 pass attempts, only 2 DPIs have been called for a grand total of 73 yards. That does not make sense. And we've seen Andrews get absolutely mugged in games. You've seen him get hung on, dragged down, pushed around, more than 5 yards of jamming. And I know we want to go back to the old school ways of, you should be able to bully these guys, but also if we're going to call it both sides. And this is clearly not getting both sides, and it's getting frustrating, and the league needs to hopefully recognize this. I assume Harbaugh's already made some, mention of this to the commish, to the officiatings, whatever, what have you. But there's a reason the Ravens are not as successful right now, and that could be due to penalties just not going their way and the refs not making the calls.
That's fair. I mean, they are a little bit, they're 6-2. I watch a lot of football, NFL football, and I would venture to say, just estimating, just a pure estimate, but somewhere between probably around 70% of all DPIs are outside the hashes. Mm-hmm. And Lamar and the Ravens don't throw outside the hashes very much. The other thing I would gripe about penalty-wise is there's been a lot of DPIs called against the Ravens corners that are very ticky-tack to me. And I'm not sitting there breaking down all 22 of every single play on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball every single week. But there's been a lot of calls against Peters and Humphrey, especially Peters, that just did not look worthy of a flag to me. And you have to wonder why the Ravens not getting those calls. But again, we're 6-2. Peters had a questionable interception that went to the Ravens' favor that turned momentum last week. So I think at the end of the day, you have to take the good with the bad at some extent. And Harbaugh's a veteran coach. He's one of the top coaches in the league. And hopefully he will bend the right ears and start getting a few more calls going Baltimore's direction.
Did you not think that was an interception? The Peters interception.
If you look at the Slack, at first I thought it was interception. Frank was like, I don't know. And I said, I don't know. Live, it looked like an interception. And then the replay, it didn't look like an interception. But live, it looked like an interception to me. I thought he had it, and I thought his rear end hit the ground. It didn't quite do it, but it was worth a challenge. I don't know why everybody's, oh my God, Harbaugh's wasting a timeout. Waste a timeout. It's worth a shot.
I was in that same boat. I remember watching it. I was sitting here at the desk, and I was like, man, that kind of looked like it was legit. Like that one felt like when he took like 4 steps, like he had it in his hands. It looked secure to me. I was like, if he would have just taken 2 steps, I think no way. But like he was backpedaling for a good 4 steps. And on the replay, like you said, I was like, that doesn't look as much of one. But live, that thing looked real deal. And shout out to Harbaugh for getting the right call, or shout out to the refs for finally siding with the Ravens on something like that. That was pretty wacky. That was pretty wild. Going on to what you wanted to begin with was the coaching discussion. You want to start off with Giro or Wink?
Let's do Giro. And, we're halfway through the season. The Ravens had a tremendous year, 2019. Mm-hmm. And they were looking to, let's see what they can do in 2020. They're Super Bowl contenders, right? Giro, put me firmly in the undecided camp, and I'm not afraid to say it. I don't think the Ravens should fire him. I think he's done a decent job. I don't think he's done an outstanding job. And I think the last time we talked, or on this podcast, or at least maybe a preseason podcast that we did together, we were talking about how terrible it would be to lose Giro if he becomes a head coach. But I'm not sure about him anymore. Lamar's comments today indicated that the offense is predictable to some extent. And it is predictable, from my view, to some extent. You can see some of the quarterback draws and some of the other plays coming from a mile away. I was listening to Warren Sharp earlier today. Roman is running more on first down than he did last year, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And you can definitely, everybody should follow Spencer, Ravens for Dummies. He puts out a lot of good stuff, and he was giving us some intel. And all the analytics guys say that the smart move is to pass on first down and make second and third down more manageable. So you're not in second and third and long, and then you can run on second and third down. So Roman is running more on first down than he did last year, despite the fact that the Ravens are 20% less effective in first down runs, roughly. And Spencer has all the numbers. He'll probably shoot that out if he hasn't already. And to give Roman credit, he has made halftime adjustments in each of the last 2 games. Against Pittsburgh, he was incorporating some pitches, some option pitches. And then against Indy, he decided to use some tempo, which was great. I don't think he's a bad offensive coordinator. I don't think he's Cam Cameron. I am not pounding the table to fire him, but I still do wonder, can he elevate the passing offense? At the end of the day, the Ravens, to win the Lombardi Trophy, they need to be able to make comebacks when they're down double-digit points. It's going to happen at some point. It's inevitable. When the defense knows the pass is coming, the Ravens' passing offense struggles. It's not all on Roman. It's not all on Lamar. It's not all on DaCosta and the way he built his roster. But I do think that Roman needs to develop that next step, that counter punch. And throughout the offseason, the Ravens were saying we want to pass the ball, deep passing, outside that hashes passing. It hasn't quite materialized. So it's been some good, some bad for Roman through the first 8 games. I think he's probably around a C grade-wise.
What is your favorite song by Cam Cameron?
Killer Cam, you mean? I think you know what that is, Jake.
That was great pronunciation. I just had to jump in.
Did you guys see my tweet earlier about Cameron? Oh man, that's pretty apropos. That was pretty apropos because Elena Bergeron, former chief editor of all of SB Nation, shout out to Elena. She tweeted her like favorite Cameron lyric, and I responded with, "It doesn't matter what Cameron's greatest lyric is because he was the one that rocked the visor bandana. Do you remember those things? It was a combination of a bandana that tied into a visor on the back, and Cameron is the one that rocked that. And I will never be cool enough to rock a visor bandana in my lifetime. And this man was out here doing it in a full swagged outfit. Shout out to the visor bandana, man. Oh my God. Shout out Cameron. But back to Giro, back to this offense. Sorry, I have to that every time anything is similar to that, I gotta put that in there because a visor bandana is insane. Go look at my Twitter and my replies. Go look at just type in Cameron visor bandana. It's legendary. It's legendary. Oh my God. Can't believe it's a thing.
I'm typing it in now.
It's brilliant. It's wonderful. All right. But the rushing offense is number one in the NFL. 1,300 rushing yards, 170 yards per game. It's you expected a drop off from over 200 rushing yards per game. I would have put them at 150. They're at 170 right now. They're at 170. They're bulldozing teams still. And they were struggling in some games. The points, they're at 28.4 points per game. That's what you want from your offense. You want them to be scoring points. They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in scoring. They're averaging 28.4 points per game. And that defense is number one in the NFL. That's what you want from them. But yes, this offense has become predictable. Yes, Lamar Jackson mentioned this on the, I believe, Rich Eisen show. That is not good to see. You just saw the Cameron visor. Isn't it amazing? It's amazing. It's wonderful.
It's okay.
Dude.
It's okay.
We're having a family-friendly podcast, but I'm going to have some words for you after the show. That thing is spectacular. I'm going to buy you one and send it to your house for Christmas. Are you kidding me? And you're going to do a podcast full episode of it on, I swear to God. But Giro, yes, a little predictable, a little bit disappointing in some areas, but he's not the only fault. There's been mistakes with Lamar. He's been throwing some poor interceptions. He's been struggling a little bit, but the play calling has also been a little bit suspect. I think you're allowed to have criticisms both ways. This isn't Facebook where we say anytime that Lamar doesn't score 40 points for your fantasy team, that Giro's got to get fired. I would like to have a little bit better of play calling. I got into an argument with Kyle Posey of Niners Nation, who does one of the SB Nation podcasts, and he said Greg Roman wouldn't have been a good coach for the Houston Texans, wouldn't have been good for Deshaun Watson. He wouldn't have made life easy on him. And I said that was completely wrong. Look how Lamar won an MVP trophy. Look how he benefited from Greg Roman's scheme. Now I'm kind of taking those words back a little bit. Maybe Kyle Posey was right. Giro hasn't made it the most simplified thing for him, or he hasn't made it more advanced to nurture Lamar's growth. I hope that things can develop better. I hope he calls on his soldiers more. I hope that, Hollywood gets more involved, and I hope that this team can find a way to get clicking in a passing scheme that regardless of whether or not the defense and their opponents know it, they can still make the plays work. Because as you said, there's going to be a double-digit lead in the future that they're going to need to overcome, and this passing offense needs to figure it out. And that's on the shoulders of Greg Roman and Lamar Jackson.
Again, I think it's an 8-game audition. Is he the guy that can take Lamar to the next level? Or is it a Bobby Petrino or somebody like that? But let's go to the other side of the ball. Don Martinell, Wink Martinell. I give Don a solid A. He was too fancy against Mahomes. I think everyone agrees with that on that Monday night game. Andy Reid was prepared and he was running, he was running laps around him. But I think it's important to note in the last few weeks, he has dialed back some of the exotic stuff until really the time calls for it. He's not just throwing the kitchen sink from the first quarter. He's waiting for the right moment. Love his aggressiveness. I really do. That's what causes takeaways and turnovers, and that's what separates good defenses from great defenses. The Ravens' defense right now is great because they are generating those turnovers. One more note, I think it's worth mentioning. We've seen quite a few pass rushers in Wink Martindale's scheme. Terrell Suggs, obviously, on his last legs. Zadarius Smith, though. Matthew Judon, Calais Campbell, and now Yannick Ngakoue. None of them have been posting gaudy sack totals. And maybe it's just a product of the scheme. And I think maybe Ravens fans need to say it doesn't matter if our highly paid edge rusher is posting 16 sacks if we have the best defense in the league. And it's really all about the corners. The corners unlock everything. But if the defense is effective, does it matter if you have two double-digit sack guys or a 15-sack guy on your team? Or does it matter if you have the best scoring defense in the league? To me, it doesn't really matter. And it might just be that's the way you cause the game. It's all about deception. And just because Ngakoue or Judon or Zadarius Smith, when he was here, didn't have 10 sacks, doesn't mean they're not really, really good players.
I think that's a great point. Do you want your guys to have high sack totals, or do you want to win those football games? Do you want your defense to be shutting down these scoring drives, or do you want to have them, get a good sack on second and force a 3rd and 15, and then they allow a 40-yard touchdown and you're scoring, points are getting scored on this defense? The Ravens have the number 1 scoring defense. They're allowing the fewest points of any team with 142 total points allowed over 8 games. They're allowing only 17.8 points per game. You cannot ask for any better than that. They are number 1 in it. And they face some pretty hardcore teams in the meantime. The Kansas City Chiefs. They face this lauded Cleveland Browns team that was supposed to be, fighting here. They faced off against Felipe Rios. They fought against the undefeated Steelers. And they've played some great games. What else do you want from them? They've allowed only 142 points through 8 games. That's what you want. And that's the product of Don Wink. That's the product of these great playmakers. And yes, he uses some exotic things, but overall, he's done really well. As you mentioned, Andy Reid ran laps around him. It reminds me of the clip of Cam Newton when Clay Matthews is calling out the wheel route. I don't know if you guys seen that on NFL films, but Clay Matthews, it's that wheel route. And then Cam looks, he's like, oh, you've been watching some film, huh? Yeah, check this out. And he throws a touchdown with Christian McCaffrey on a play anyways. And McCaffrey comes up there and laughs about it. That's kind of what it felt like. Like Wink was like, oh, this is coming. We got this figured out. And Andy Reid goes, oh, I don't think you do. You're going to learn a lesson. You're going to learn the lesson the hard way is what it was. And that's what Andy Reid's supposed to do. He's a brilliant mind in offensive strategy in football as a whole. He's a Hall of Fame coach, as we know. And you get punched down a few times, but overall, I got to give it to him. This is an A grade. What are you going to complain about? These players are making plays, and the stat totals aren't as gaudy as you want, but their takeaways are nuts. They're first and forced fumbles with 10 of them on the season, and most of them coming from their cornerbacks punching out footballs. Are you kidding me? Wild. Absolutely wild.
John Wink sounds like he's got his name picked out if he chooses to go down a certain video career path of an adult variety.
Yeah, he's going to do some old boxing, He's going to punch people until they can only see out of one eye so they can just win. Yeah, that's where you're going with that. That's great, man. Thank you very much.
Jake's mind's in the gutter tonight, I think.
No kidding. My word.
Yeah. We have to move on now. We have to keep it moving.
Pounds, I think, is what
keep it moving. All right. So do you have any changes in personnel at this point?
Yeah, let's get through this section pretty rapidly.
Yes.
But I do think that second half of the season is now upon us. Right guard is really the spot. A lot of people seem to be in agreement. A lot of Ravens offensive line gurus. Patrick McCarty is not getting it done in right guard.
Nope.
Tyree Phillips was serviceable, Not great, but you could accept it for a rookie. McCarty just does not have, in my opinion, the physical attributes. He does not have the physicality. He does not have the size. He does not have the length to really hold up. And I really do hope that the Ravens are ready to make a move to Ben Powers. Powers had 2 really nice down blocks on the goal line against Indy when he was brought in as the 6th lineman. He is big, he's strong, he has long arms, he's powerful. He played for Oklahoma. He played really well in Yonda's stead against Pittsburgh in Week 17 last year. And I'd like to see them give him a chance. At this point, right guard is the weak link that's breaking the chain on the offensive line. And even if I don't know why Powers hasn't gotten a shot yet. I mean, they drafted him. McCarty was a UDFA. But if for some reason maybe Powers doesn't understand the complexity of Roman scheme, then maybe put Ben Bredesen in there or somebody. But they need a little bit more power and juice and anchor ability at right guard, I think.
Completely agree. I believe I spoke on this last podcast. I called Patrick McCarty a loser in our winners losers category because I wanted more from him. He was supposed to be out there fighting for the center spot. He was supposed to be battling with Matt Skura for the center spot. He was supposed to be battling for that right guard spot. I really liked what I saw from him, and I have yet to see that. And I'm unfortunately in the zone of he needs to take a seat to Ben Powers or whatever's going on at right guard, because that ain't it. What he's doing ain't it. He's gonna be in my losers category. I think I'll touch a little bit more on it, but I fully agree with you. Something's got to give, and we knew this was coming when Marshall Yonda retired. We all talked about this. There's going to be a significant absence at right guard, and nobody you're going to find is going to be as good as him. But damn it, you need to find somebody serviceable enough to not notice it so drastically. Right. And Orlando Brown Jr. really did a good job of nullifying it when he was on right tackle and helping Tyree Phillips, stepping up, doing what he needed to do. And that's not happening as much anymore.
Right. It's, you're not going to have Pro Bowl, All-Pro after Yonda retires, but
yeah,
you want replacement level. You don't want below replacement level.
Mm-hmm.
And McCarty's just getting blown up in weight. I think it's a physicality thing. He just doesn't have the physical ability, and he's a fine player, and I hope he has a long career, and I hope he has a long career with the Ravens, but he's better off as a backup center than a starting right guard. No question. They got to figure something out. They drafted a bunch of linemen, so hopefully, Harbaugh, now the second half of the season, he will start playing some of the younger guys. And that takes me to my next point. Running back, Kyle. And I want your opinion on this because I'm not really sure exactly what to make of it. But the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards combination has been 1-2 punch, has been great. While Mark Ingram has been shelved. Are the Ravens better off with the 2-man committee at this point? Ingram, maybe he hit that 30-year-old cliff. Gus has the power of the vision. Dobbins is forcing missed tackles. Would you leave Ingram on the bench when he's ready?
I do. I personally do. I think that's the right move. You've seen the stats from Gus and JK popping off. JK, I believe, had back-to-back 100-yard games. Gus Edwards is out there bulldozing men. And when you have a struggle at right guard, you got to get north-south quickly. And what better way to do that than to run your heavyweight tailback, Gus the Bus Edwards, right up the middle. Maybe hit him with a little misdirection with J.K. Dobbins, get some movement going there. But you got to find a different way. Mark Ingram, I respect, I appreciate. I'm thrilled that he's a Baltimore Raven, and I want him to still make plays. And I'm all for him being maybe the spell back as the third guy, which is crazy to think because coming into this, he still looked like he was deserving of the number one spot. But it has quickly been shown by the athletic and just talent and ability of the two younger backs that maybe he needs to be more of this passing back, and maybe even not that. Maybe J.K. Dobbins is more deserving of it. But right now, I keep Gus Edwards as 1A, and I put J.K. Dobbins as 1B, and I put Mark Ingram on the back burner in my scenario. What about you, man?
No, I think that makes sense. I think Ingram last year, he was breaking tackles. He was, dropping a shoulder and running over people. And he was making a lot of plays as catching the ball and scoring touchdowns. Maybe that's where he's best, but I just don't see him making a lot of guys miss on first and second down. And maybe he is a good pass blocker. So maybe he could be a third down weapon and you leave him in the block when you need him. And maybe he can leak out on an option route or something like that and find the end zone. You don't want to take all his time away. But again, Dobbins and Gus, I think, clearly are going to be the 1-2 punch next year. And, time is now. Better now than never.
Yep. Somebody mentioned on an SB Nation podcast, what must be done eventually must be done immediately. And Ingram, if you're going to drag out this, what's the reason? Because you don't want to hurt his feelings, because you don't want to cause disruption in the locker room. I guess you can get that to a degree, but overall, you want to win. You want to put up 170 rushing yards per game. There's players on this roster that are clearly doing better at that than Mark Ingram was, and I think you need to make the move now, and go for it. Unless you have this strange, drawn-out season strategy of keeping Gus and J.K. fresh for the playoffs, which makes sense in theory, but you want to win those football games. You want to get a better seed. Maybe you want to get the bye. Overall, you want to be able to win football games, and this is a week-to-week league, and what must be done eventually must be done immediately, and Ingram needs to be backing up the guys, in my mind, rather than leading. He's not making those big angry plays. He was week 1 of 2019 season's angry runs where he was bulldozing the Dolphins for 56 yards on his first carry and boom to the shoulder. We have yet to see those kind of plays in 2020, and it's nothing against Ingram as a person. He's just not making the plays as a player like we want him to.
Yeah, no question. I don't know. What is the best way to utilize Ingram? I'm not really sure. I don't necessarily think that there's going to be a problem in the locker room if the Ravens start giving more touches to Gus and Dobbins. They've both been very effective, and I think players recognize talent. And another player who I think the players recognize the talent of is Devin Duvernay.
There we go.
His playing time is up, but his touches are still sparse. He's actually outsnapped Boykin the last couple weeks, but he's still not getting the ball very much. Only 1 touch last week. He's a playmaker. And I think what we've seen in the modern new NFL, all teams need 4 to 5 playmakers. The 2020 champion Ravens, for example, you cannot get away with two or three playmakers. It's irritating when you hear, well, the Ravens picked a wide receiver in the first round. They're fine. No, that's not how it works. You need a lot of guys. You need a lot of guys getting touches and making plays. I think Duvernay needs 4 to 5 touches per game. You need to take the pressure off of Lamar Jackson. He cannot be the facilitator and the playmaker at the same time, and you put all the pressure on him and he feels everything on his shoulders. It's too much for him. They need more guys, and I think Duvernay need not only more snaps, but more touches. Let him step up. Second half breakout, hopefully.
Yeah, completely agree. Get the ball to your playmakers. There's a reason Hollywood is all pissed off and tweeting is because he's not getting the ball enough. Devin Duvernay's not getting the ball enough. You gotta get these guys the ball. We've seen what they can do. You've seen, I believe, I don't know if another kick return touchdown has occurred, but Devin Duvernay is the only guy with one right now, unless somebody else ran one back. This team needs to step up. They need to make plays. Yeah, it was a punt. Excuse me, but
no. The other one was a punt.
Okay, okay, thank you. And he's fast. He's capable. He can make guys miss. He can burn people on the edge. Get the ball to these guys. Call some plays and call their number. That's why you have them on the roster. And I liked the aggression you said. The Ravens drafted a guy in the first round. They're good. No, they're not. Get more weapons. You see what these best offenses in the NFL do. They go down by 2-3 scores and they say, we have this. Let's step the F up and let's go get some touchdowns. Let's put some points on the board and let's put some fear back into these guys. We have the ability. If you have players on your roster that have the ability to make plays, let them do that. Go step up. Devin Duvernay's numbers and snaps, like you said, are up. Now it's time to start feeding him the ball. Feed Hollywood the ball. Get this thing passed around. Get it spread around and take care of business. Start throwing on first down more, like you know, instead of running the ball on first down, like you mentioned. Giro's been doing that more in 2020. Start throwing it more. Call Duvernay's number a little bit more. Call Hollywood's. Call whoever you got to do. Get this ball passed around.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's proven himself to be a playmaker. Mm-hmm. So you can't just keep doing the same thing. You need to expand and evolve, right? Yep. 2 more guys on defense I'll highlight quickly.
Okay.
And we can move on to the next section. Malik Harrison, my favorite draft pick of the last draft class. He's been very stout against the run. He knocked back All-Pro Quentin Nelson.
Unreal.
In the hole last week. Nelson
Unreal.
was coming with a head of steam, and Harrison just whacked him. And Nelson, some believe he's the best overall offensive lineman in the entire league. He's also very good, very solid in zone coverage. So I'd like to see him continue to see more snaps. He did have an opportunity last week. Another gentleman, rookie, who's going to see more opportunity in the coming weeks is Matabike. Justin, the defensive tackle, is probably going to see a majority of Calais Campbell's snaps while he's recovering. Capable against the run and has some disruptive ability. So a lot of years, Harbaugh will wait until the second half of the year until he starts trusting his rookies and working them in. And I think those 2 guys can bring a little bit more juice to what is already the best defense in the league.
Well, no. Yes, if you would have saw Marshall Yanda get blasted in the hole and knocked back the way that Quentin Nelson would, you'd be hyping up whoever the linebacker was. This deserves the same praise. Malik Harrison did that to Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson is on a pace similar to Marshall Yanda's talent. He is truly gifted. I loved him as a prospect. I'm not a big NFL draft guy. That guy was still like, man, I'd kill to get that guy on the Baltimore Ravens. So seeing Malik Harrison do that, give him all the damn praise he deserves. Now we're going to move to our winners and losers halfway mark. We'll do this a little bit fast because we have been grinding the time a little bit long, but we always have fun having some talks here. Let's start on defense. Vas, throw it to you first. Who are your 2? You got 2 winners on defense? What you got?
I have 1, 2, 3. I have 5, 6 winners on defense.
All right.
Defense is looking good, but I'll start with the safeties.
Okay.
Chuck Clark, Deshaun Elliott, both have really exceeded my expectations. Earl Thomas is basically forgotten at this point, and I think that's meaningful. The safeties have been awesome. Chuck Clark, really good in coverage against tight ends, showing that nose for the ball, teabagging Phillip Rivers on the way to the end zone. Love to see that. And Deshaun Elliott, I always liked the kid, but he was always hurt, and he is really, knock on wood, staying healthy. He's a thumper in the run game and really holding up well in coverage. So I think both the safeties have been big-time winners for the first half of the season, in my opinion.
Very true. Completely agree with that. I'm going to quickly switch over. I think all 3 of these guys might be on your list. These are my 3 winners. I wanted to cut it short. 3 winners: Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith. All 3 of those cornerbacks we love. Marlon's still an arguable defensive player of the year. He's lights out. He's become a player. I think I mentioned this on the last episode of Post Chief and Deputy, that you don't just not want to throw at him. You don't want to put plays near him. You don't want to run it towards his side because he's going to be able to stop you for a loss. He's going to force the fumble out. He is terrifying to play against as just anywhere in his field of play. Meanwhile, Marcus Peters, the production of this man in the takeaway game is on par with Deion Sanders and Ed Reed. his takeaway numbers are on par with Deion Sanders and Ed Reed. Are you kidding me? Those are some pretty good names to be beside. And last, you all know I am the Jimmy Smith stan of Baltimore Beatdown, of maybe Baltimore Ravens fandom. I've always loved number 22, and he is putting up, I believe, PFF's best coverage per snap rates right now. He came in great shape. I'm just excited to see that as a veteran, he's still stepping up and making all the plays that we could ever appreciate. Vass, you go.
Marlon Humphrey, what else can you say? Elite coverage, 4 forced fumbles, versatile, playing all over the field. Slot corner goes down, he comes in the slot. He just locks it. I think he's the best player on the team. I think he's the best corner in the NFL, worth every single penny of his contract.
Yes, sir.
Marcus Peters had a tough game against Kansas City, but he is a generational ball hawk. No question about it. I'm going to disagree with you on Jimmy Smith.
Ooh.
You're not Jimmy Smith's biggest fan.
Oh, okay.
I'm Jimmy Smith's biggest fan.
All right.
Pro Football Focus, second team All-Pro or mid-season, whatever it's called. He's been targeted 31 times this season, allowed 14 completions for a grand total of 91 yards. 52.2 quarterback rating, absolutely outstanding, and just stuffing people against the run. 2 tackles for a loss, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery. In my mind, by far the best offseason move Eric DeCosta made was to re-sign Jimmy Smith. This is maybe one of his best seasons ever at this advanced age. It's very, very impressive.
Also, a friend of yours, by the way. You had a little dance with him at that wedding, didn't you?
Yeah. So, we ran into him at my cousin's engagement party. He's friends with my cousin's fiance, and he's a fun guy. We had a lot of fun, and we definitely did not drink at all.
Attaboy. Cover the trails.
You're covering the trail.
I'm a good person. I'm a good person. All right. So let's move on. My losers. I only wrote one down because this is what I really wanted to focus on. It's Derek Wolfe. This was something I was a little bit worried about when he first signed. I was hopeful about as well. You know, he'd come in. I thought he'd come in and feast. He'd get the one-on-one matchups because you don't solo Brandon Williams. You don't solo block Calais Campbell or Matt Judon. You gotta give up one, and I think Derek Wolfe's the guy that if I'm scheming against this Ravens defense, I'll him or Tyus Bowser. Let's be real; those are about the only guys that I'm gonna solo block. I thought he was gonna get it, and maybe there's film that shows that I am completely wrong. Maybe I'm just spewing lies out here, but I wanted more than 18 combined tackles with only 2 tackles for loss and 2 quarterback hits. I assume he also wants more. Maybe this back half of the season with Yannick Ngakoue and Judon on the team, with Pernell McPhee. Maybe he steps into some more snaps with Calais Campbell being absent. I want more. I don't think he's done enough. And, he came off a season high in some numbers in 2019. I wanted more. I think it's fair to say that he is not on my winner's bracket at the halfway mark.
That's a fair call. I agree with you on Wolf.
I'm not going to acknowledge my howl.
It was a great howl, Jake.
Wow, thanks, Jake. Great job. Thank you, producer.
Before I agree with you on Wolf, Kyle. Before I have one more winner though. My man PMP, Pernell McPhee.
Okay.
32 years old, still getting it done. He's a 3-down performer.
And he doesn't care what you say about me.
That's right. What year was that? That was a good song. 11 pressures are tied for second in the team behind Judon. And I think he sets the tone, and he's a good leader. Loser-wise, I'll just group Tyus Bowser and Jihad Ward together just because Yannick Ngakoue took their snaps. So one more question, though.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Queen, Splash plays, yes. Forced fumbles, touchdowns, couple sacks, also a couple coverage busts. Has he made the desired impact from a first-round inside linebacker, Kyle?
I think yes. I think the turnovers and I think the splash plays are all you wanted from him. I think there was enough surrounding talent that you didn't care about his consistency nearly as much as him. Does he have the talent to make the splash plays? Because that's what you want more than anything. Yes, I would love the consistency, but I'd much prefer him getting takeaways. I'd much prefer him making the splash plays, scoring a forced fumble off of his former LSU teammate, taking it to the house. I prefer that because if you just got some consistent tackling linebacker with some coverage talent, yeah, that'd be great. But I want forced fumbles on this team. This Baltimore Ravens defense needs to get the ball as frequent to their offensive playmakers as possible, and that's what Queen has done. I think you can coach consistency more than you can coach the splash plays and the talent of making something out of nothing, more so than anything else. What are your thoughts, though?
No, that's a good point. I don't disagree with that. I think that's fine. Move on to the offense, or do you have another loser?
Nope, that was it. I just honed in on. I did 2 and 1 is what I did. I knew you'd come in more prepared than me.
Well, it is what it is. Who'd you have on offense?
Offense, Gus Bus. You got to feed him more. He's a staple of the backfield. That's kind of why I had I was pretty excited when he brought up the Mark Ingram bit. He's better than J.K. Dobbins and Ingram right now. Let Gus cook. He's been stepping up. He's been the guy that Lamar's really worked well with, and like I said, he's the north-south guy. He's going to get you the yards, and he's been making plays. He's been scoring. He's been getting first downs. He's a chain mover, and I really like what I've seen out of him. And I'm thrilled that in Ingram's absence, he's been able to elevate his game and prove that he's worthy of the touches that he has earned.
I can't disagree with that at all. Gus is a UDFA running back gem. No question about it. Bradley Bozeman, to me, is the most improved player on the team. He is a devastating pull blocker. Mm-hmm. The run game is, in a lot of ways, that's kind of the foundation of the run game is the Bozeman pulls. And he's become much more consistent in pass protection. I think he's an early extension candidate, and we'll try to go a little bit quickly now, and I'll give you a couple more on the offensive line. Orlando Brown Jr., he had trouble with the Watts, both of them. JJ gave him trouble. TJ gave him trouble. No shame in that. Some of the best pass rushers around. He's fared pretty darn well at left tackle in 2.5 games now. And even DJ Fluker, the Lamar threat, again, it does help these guys. You can't take that away. But both these guys have been strong run blockers. And I'll give you one more again, Kyle. Willie Snead.
Yes,
you
sir.
mentioned him earlier. Finally getting involved. 9 catches for 143 yards the last 2 games. He's the third down man. He's a third down man, especially against zone. And he does really well with the run through the catch. He's a tough man to bring down the open field. Lamar has a 110 rating when targeting Willie Snead, which is one of his best marks. And just so everyone understands, Willie Snead is a bona fide chain mover. 63% of his catches went for first downs in 2018. 67% of his catches went for first down in 2019. 77% of his catches have gone for first downs in 2020. That's pretty good for a slot guy.
That guy vast. Look at that. Love to see those numbers and love Willie Snead for him. I wanted to just take that quick note on Bradley Bozeman. You draft a guy with the 215th overall pick in 2020.
Here's a guy.
Here's a guy who was drafted at 215 overall in 2018 NFL draft. Weren't really sure if he was going to make the roster. Matt Stroh, taking care of it. The Ravens already had a chock full offensive line, but this man in 2 years of development with Joe D'Alessandris, Joey D, Big D, he's now out there, as a starting left guard making plays. I was pretty wary of him, back a couple years ago. And to see his development, like you said, he's become one of the best players on this offensive line. And you love to see a guy's success story being drafted that late in a draft and making the plays. Love to see it, man. Really, really happy about that one. I had Orlando Brown Jr. as my second biggest winner. He's out there battling. Yes, he's struggled against some of the Watts. They are some of the best pass rushers in the NFL. They're gonna make light work of some people sometimes, and that's unfortunately just the way she goes. And as I mentioned, this was what some fans called for. He wanted to be left tackle. They wanted to see him at left tackle. Maybe they save the money, save some cap from Ronnie Stanley. Maybe they, tag him. Maybe they let him walk. Maybe they get the comp pick for him. But he's out there fighting, and he's made pretty great work of it thus far. Who's your loser?
Hold on, I have one more winner.
My word.
Don't sell my winner short. My final winner is Lamar Jackson.
There we go. Love it.
He's not playing an MVP level. No one will dispute that. Occasionally he looks flustered. His pocket presence is not great. He's made some poor decisions this year, decisions I never thought I would see him make it. He's still the engine of this offense, making tight window throws consistently. His on-target percentage is 74%. Last year when he won MVP, it was 76%. He's breaking tackles. He's breaking long runs. I think some of the critique and the venom towards Lamar has gone way too far. When you sit here and you think about it and you say, Stanley's hurt, DaCosta, as Spencer always says, it's the second least compensated offense in the league. He's surrounded by Hollywood Brown, a first-round receiver, J.K. Dobbins, a second-round running back. And besides that, it's a bunch of journeymen, mid-round picks, and UDFAs.
Mm-hmm.
Without Lamar Jackson elevating this offense, I would be very surprised if this wasn't a bottom 5 unit. I really, really would. He is the engine. He is the hub in the middle of the wheel. Everything revolves around him. The fact that the Ravens are now in a good position to make the playoffs, although they're not quite reaching the heights they did last year, is very much attributable to Lamar Jackson.
He's not even 24 years old. He's 23 and 309 days, according to PFR. And this kid is still doing amazing things. And yes, he's made some faults. He's made some mistakes. But like you said, and like Spencer says, this offense isn't a highly compensated or highly drafted, highly touted offense. They spent all the money on defense. That's what the Ravens decided. That's what EDC said. And he's still popping off. He's still throwing touchdowns. He's still made some incredible throws that we've seen on a week-to-week basis. And if you take him out of this offense, you put in, a number of quarterbacks in the NFL, they also don't succeed. And they succeed at a lesser rate than him.
Flip it the other way. How many quarterbacks will be doing better with this offense than Lamar? I think Patrick Mahomes, most likely. Russell
Aaron
Wilson,
Rodgers,
maybe Aaron Rodgers.
Russell Wilson, yeah, that's
okay. So that's 3.
Well, if you ask a certain former Pittsburgh Steeler who will never, and I repeat, never shut the fuck up, Kyler Murray is on that list too.
Even if you want to put Kyler Murray, who has major issues with downfield accuracy and won a game on Monday Night Football, completing 9 passes 2 weeks ago. Okay. You want to say there's 5? My God, there's 5 quarterbacks that are better than him right now. Give me a break.
Sign me up for the 6th best quarterback in the NFL if the 6th best is Lamar Jackson.
It's ridiculous.
Sign me up. Because there were times that we have watched this Baltimore Ravens squad in misery. There was Jimmy Clausen as a starting quarterback for the Ravens at one point.
There was Ryan Mallett who beat Tomlin.
Who beat
Tomlin?
Yeah.
They swept the Steelers that year, and Crab Mallet beat Tomlin. Jimmy Pickles, listen, it was kind of a tough scene there, but he wore the gold pants. So
there was some nightmares here. And to think that the Ravens fans are complaining about this man as a quarterback, he's not even 24, for God's sake. Insane.
By the way,
you brought up
that's really sinking into Jimmy Graham play basketball territory here. I'm just warning everyone.
So did Antonio Gates, dude. It's crazy. It's crazy.
People won't talk about that.
Long Beach native Matt Nieto. You guys won't understand that reference. That's a hockey reference, but that's the.
Did he play basketball too? Hockey players play basketball?
No. All right. Who's your loser on offense, or losers plural?
I have multiple losers.
I'm
sorry. I go deep, Kyle. I don't know how deep you go.
I knew that we were going to be grinding the live for a while, so I was like, this is probably we're going to have to cut some names. So I was like, I'll cut them now. But I'm proud of you.
All right.
I'm happy you brought them. Let's do this, man.
Let's go. Okay. Miles Boykin, clearly a loser. Expecting a big year. It's been anything but. Miscommunications, a few drops. He's getting phased out. Mm-hmm. And then Justice Hill. I was hoping for some opportunity. I really was. He can make people miss in the open field. You and I were out there at training camp with our press passes last year. We saw him making people miss in the open field. I think those two are pretty easy. Matt Skura, he hasn't quite played as good as he did last year. He came off an injury. I wouldn't quite put him a loser. I didn't
put him in there.
So here's the big question: the big two receivers, right?
Uh-huh.
You tell me what you think. I'll give you. Let me make the case, and then you take it from there.
Great.
Mark Andrews, 7% drop rate. He's still on pace for 10 touchdowns, but his yards total from last year, right now, he's down 30%. 30% is a lot, right? And then Hollywood Brown. He was supposed to add muscle. He was going to be, whatever, and he still shies away from contact. He's not that yards after the catch, run after the catch kind of guy. He only has 2 touchdowns. He had 7 last year, so he's off that pace. He really hasn't taken that next step into number 1 wide receiver territory. He's a year and a half into his first season. I think it is fair to say not only is Andrews a loser, but that Eric DeCosta maybe picked the wrong wide receiver when you see DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown and Terry McLaurin looking like real number 1s.
Okay, so we'll talk case 1, and that's going to be Mark Andrews. The defense knows Mark Andrews is Lamar's number 1 guy. It's not even Hollywood. It's not Snead. It's not Boykin. It's not Duvernay or Proche. It is 100% Mark Andrews. He's getting mugged. We've seen it. We've seen it on the film that he is getting mugged. I don't watch too much film, but I've still been able to catch through the games itself that Mark Andrews is getting absolutely mugged in the middle of the hashes because they don't call that as much when it's in the middle. It's just defensive holding if it is even called. 30% is a lot. I can't argue with that. He's still on pace for 10 touchdowns, though, which was number 1, I believe, in tight ends, and it was 4th in the league last year in receiving touchdowns among all candidates for receiving touchdowns. I can't call somebody that has 5 touchdowns in 8 games too much of a loser, even if they were all goal line touchdowns, and they weren't. I think scoring 5 times through the air is pretty great feat. I'm not going to say that Mark Andrews is a loser. I think he might be losing in the aspect of maybe not getting his number much as called or not getting as many opportunities. But overall, I don't think that he's a loser. Hollywood, on the other hand, I think that's fair to say that he is he's deserving the loser category. And the greatest point that you made is DK Metcalf is a week-to-week dynasty in the Russell Wilson offense, and he's making plays. And I liked him in the draft, but more importantly, he's he's the type of player that the Baltimore Ravens needed. They didn't need this fast, small guy. They needed this dominant big guy. And DK Metcalf was there. Terry McLaurin was there. A.J. Brown was there. And the Baltimore Ravens went with the fastest small guy that they could, and he's still shying away from contact. We saw the workout videos like you mentioned. I loved every point that you made there. I think you're right with it. He was supposed to be making plays. He was supposed to be shifty, fast, strong. You know, he got the muscle added so he could break off with some press. He can make some more better moves. He was working out with Antonio Brown, who's a legend of the game in terms of his release and making people miss and finding zones. It's clearly upsetting. That being said, he has 417 yards through 8 games. He had only 584 yards as a whole last year. He's making a good leap from his rookie year to a sophomore season. If he doubles it up through these last 8 games, that's 417 yards. They've played some pretty tough pass defenses. I think Spencer, once again, shout out Ravens for Dummies, talked about they're playing some easier pass defenses on the back half of the schedule after playing some of the best. You know, maybe he opens it up. I think it's fair to say right now he's in the losers category. I'm not going to debate that, but I think he has more than enough opportunity here to change that and make a 1,200-yard season. Maybe he blows up for 800 yards over these last 8 games. That'd be great. And he has the opportunity, and him maybe throwing a little bit of shade on Twitter and recanting it publicly can get enough of attention call to where, hey, I have the skill set. It's time for you to start calling some plays. We talked about that with Giro in our earlier section, that you got the weapons, you got to start calling some numbers, and maybe this can get going now.
Perfectly stated. Did you have another loser? Are we ready to go to our?
I did. Real quick. Patrick McCarry, we talked about him earlier. He's struggling. I requested in the last show that he step up, make the field, get more playing time. He got the playing time. One of his biggest clips is, unfortunately, him getting his butt kicked on the goal line against the Indy team, and Gus Edwards then losing the football because he completely whiffed his block. I believe Ben Powers hit his on that one. So that's something to be talked about. Macari, I really like you. I really appreciate you being on the pod. I appreciate you as a player. Was super hype about you at center, stepping up. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing enough from him, and he's still in this category.
I agree with that. You know, Macari, it's not a one-game thing. Mm-hmm. He got bulldozed against Tennessee.
Yes.
In the playoffs. He was whipped consistently against Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago, and then Buckner got him again on the goal line, and that's not the only – I mean, he's really struggling. He's really struggling. So He's had his chance, and I agree. Let's move on now. 8 games in, 8 games to go. Confidence in the Ravens, the 6-2 Baltimore Ravens, in making the playoffs, Kyle Barber.
Yes, the Baltimore Ravens are making the playoffs. There's no doubt in my mind, outside of serious injuries taking down Lamar Jackson plus more. You know, I think like Lamar goes down, I don't see it really making that. Yeah, you know, I'm not one to knock on the wood. I'm really not about it, but that congratulations, you got it out of me on that one. But I don't see it unless, you know, a multitude of players go down on offense and defense. This Baltimore Ravens franchise is too talented about it. What about you, my friend?
Yes, I completely agree. Barring significant injury and maybe significant injuries, they're making the playoffs. All the predictive models that the analytics folks, they're between 90 and 95%, and I'd go above even that.
Yep.
Easiest remaining strength of schedule for what it's worth.
Yep. Now, what is your confidence in winning the AFC North with the Steelers still undefeated?
I'm not overly confident. The models say 20%. I am more in the 45% range. Okay. I think the Ravens have a chance. I really do. So there's quite a few different models that you can look at. 538 has one. I think the Ringer has one. CBS has one. You can go check them out.
No, I'm the 538 guy.
I like 538. They do a nice job. They really do. So anyway, they're expecting the Ravens to win 12 games and the Steelers to win 4. So that would put the Steelers 2 games above the Ravens. Of course, Thanksgiving, big game. The Ravens have to win that game. If the Ravens win that game, they close the gap by 1. If they lose a game, it's done. I mean, there's no question. The Steelers have the tiebreaker, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So what gives me hope? Tomlin often drops 1 or even 2 games a year where he's a heavy favorite. The Ryan Mallett game that Jake was talking about, for example.
Yep.
They almost lost last week to Dallas. If the referees did not give them a couple nice calls there.
Yep.
Pittsburgh still has at Buffalo, at Cleveland, and 2 times against Cincinnati. And I don't think they match up against Cincinnati quite as well as the Ravens do. So really it comes down to the Ravens' next 3. New England, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. I think after that they're going to run the table. There's a good chance they run the table after the next 3. Can they win 2 of the next 3? Can they win 3 of the next 3? So that's where I'm at. I think there's a decent chance. The Ravens might not lose another game in the regular season. I actually think if I had to put odds on it, I think it's like 60, 70, 75% they don't lose another game.
That's pretty big.
But you would still need Pittsburgh to lose another one on top of that. So I'm at 45. I'm bullish, but I'm not over the top.
Yeah. The Steelers of old would have dropped a game by now to a lesser opponent. And they've heavily struggled against teams that are more than 2 games under 500. Tomlin's and the Tomlin Steelers are infamous for it, but we haven't seen that so far. They struggle against Cowboys, as you mentioned, but like it wasn't like they didn't look as out of it as they do. They typically come out 1 game a year that you're just like there's no shot. I just remember the Raiders game a couple of years ago where I just like knew it, that they were just going to drop a game against a really poor Raiders team a few years back. They just don't feel that same way anymore. So for that reason, I'm less confident in winning in the Ravens winning the AFC North than I was for sure 4 games ago. But I'm confident in the Ravens winning that Thursday Thanksgiving game. It'd be really sweet, especially because the girlfriend's family is a full family of Steelers fans. It really, yeah. Tragically, there's that.
You're still dating her? You're still dating her?
So the whole thing is, Allie's father, who passed away, was a Steelers fan, and when I found that out, she's like, "Yeah, so there's no way you're gonna argue with me being a Steelers fan because I have a dead dad card." And I was like, "Well, that's fair," and so that's the end of the conversation.
True.
So. That's the end of that, but it'd be nice to still have the Ravens win on Thanksgiving, to just kind of poke them back after I had to go to their house on Dia de los Muertos a couple weeks ago. But I'm confident the Ravens winning that Thanksgiving game. I really think that's going to be big, but I just don't know if that'll be enough when it all comes down to it. So I have Ravens 45, Steelers 55, and I'm looking forward to this 4 games later when we get to talk about this again. I'm really excited about that.
Thanksgiving should be a lot of fun, especially because in this crazy year and you have COVID and we just had my father-in-law passed away not too long ago, and you have the holidays, and who knows, you can only have groups of 10 and whatever. Yeah. That maybe the Ravens can bring us a little bit of joy and happiness on the holidays. It should be really fun. It's the way it should be. And football should be fun. And if I can give one more thought before Jake gets us on out of here, we're just trying to bring a little bit of perspective. Kyle and I, we don't quite have the time to podcast as much as we used to, or even write opinion pieces as much as we used to. Yeah. But we're all Ravens fans here. there's some Ravens fans that blame every single loss for the last 10 years on the run-pass ratio. And if the Ravens would have only run the ball more, they would have won every time. There's some people who blame the play callers. There's some people that absolve everything and think Ozzie was never made a mistake and whatever. I respect all your opinions, and I hope you respect mine. We're just trying to bring a little bit of perspective, and let's not beat up Ravens Nation each other. If somebody has a dissenting opinion, just respect it and appreciate it, and let's all enjoy the season together.
Quite incredible how much dissension a 6-2 team engenders sometimes.
No doubt.
Quite peculiar. Before Jake gets us on out of there, I just want to say a quick thank you to all who listen. Thank you all to who download these episodes every week. Thank you to those who listen to Host, Chief, and Deputy, the brilliant name that came about. It wasn't me, actually. Just pointing that out. It actually wasn't you who created it. But I'm just thankful to all that listen. I'm thankful for you two knuckleheads. And like Vas said, we don't got as much time right now. We're grinding on our own personal lives, taking care of some business elsewhere. And I'm just happy to do this every 4 weeks with you guys. Appreciate you guys just as much as family. And cheers, my friends. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks. Is that all we got?
That is the last up. That's all we got.
You sure you didn't go another hour here? I mean,
what else you got, Jake? Do you want one more dirty joke? What do we got to work with?
Oh, I'm just saying. It seems like you left a little bit of meat on the bone.
Man, I never leave meat on the bone. The wings are empty. They're dry when I'm doing them.
But great job, fellas. I hope my interjections were good and fun and had their place. But I think you guys are really coming into your own here with this little experiment that we've got going on, turning into a full-fledged thing now. It's a thing. After 2, it's a thing. That's my opinion.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I think like at least 4 or 5.
4 is going to be in the season, man.
No. I mean, in life, not just podcasting.
Yeah. Okay.
We've done a lot. We were doing what was that random thing that Jake had us doing? We were doing brackets of Brian Billick against Ozzie Newsome or something.
That was the
fun, man.
Dog days of quarantine. I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
that was the dog days of quarantine.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. I think
mom's real estate office doing podcasts, boys. Oh man,
we might have to get another one of those going in a couple of weeks if the quarantine goes how it seems to be trending.
Yeah, with looking, no kidding. But yeah, we're gonna do the socials real quick, Jake.
Absolutely. You can follow the podcast feed on Twitter at Podcast Beatdown. You can follow the main website feed at Be More Beatdown. You can follow me at Jake Luke. That's Louque. You can follow these beautiful bastards at Vasilis Beatdown, VASILIS Beatdown, and BB_ Kyle P. Barber on Twitter. Just an absolute minefield of potential mistakes to make there. But we've shouted Spencer out 8 times on here. Give him a call at Ravens for Dummies. That's my other co-host if anyone's tuning in for the first time. So tune in next time to catch me and him chopping up this week's slate of games that we have coming up. Probably going to be releasing on Friday there. So stay tuned for that. Really appreciate everyone tuning in for this. Let's just say it was a monolithic episode is what I would call it. Almost 2 hours running here. Probably going to be over 2 hours as an audio file. So it was fun.
Well, thank you very much for being here as our producer. We appreciate you, Jake. And one final note, we are at 10,000. We're over 10,900 followers on the main account. We've been growing, my friends. We've been putting in the work, and we're seeing the results. So maybe we can get to 11K by end of season, huh?
Hope so. I'm going to go get my chainsaw ready for my neighbor's tree removal that interrupted the pod.
Getting to 10,000, I need to get my personal account to 1,000. So
15, 60, man. I'm growing. I'm hyped.
I'm at like 930 right now. I got to get
we'll work on that. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you guys for being a part of this wonderful show. I'm happy to have you and be able to talk to you guys every 4 weeks. I talk to you more than that, but still. Cheers, my friends.
Thanks, guys.
So.
Peace.